Hello and welcome to Consolecowboys. So today we're going to take a look at Burp AI and all of the things associated with that. So if that's not something you're interested in, just leave me a comment below for saving you time and move on after letting the video run through and subscribing to the channel. All right, so let's get started. We are going to talk about data privacy associated with Burp AI and what it's appropriate to use it for, such as penetration testing, bug bounty, CTF exams, and learning, and what we should not use it on. And then we're going to talk about all of the things that Burp AI can do. So that includes AI-powered logins, Explore, Explainer, AI extensions, and custom repeater actions. You can find that list if you go into the settings and just search for AI. And here you can hover over this little guy here and it will say RTFM. You know what that means. We need to read the manual. So if you hop over to the manual and scroll up and down that, you'll see stuff as Explore Issue, Explainer, Broken Access Control, AI-powered logins, the same stuff that we have listed in my list right here. And you'll also see a way to disable all of these AI features, which is something you may want to do depending where you're using this. So I'm going to cancel this out right here. And next up, we are also going to talk about extensions, right? So we had custom repeater actions. We can do that with something like Shadow Repeater. We also have HTTP Analyzer, can analyze HTTP traffic and give you potential ways to attack it. And things like Bounty Prompt that has pre-made prompts that you can select a request response and it will suggest, ways to hack it based on the vulnerability class that you choose. So we're going to go through all of that today. So hopefully that is of interest to you, and let's get started. So the first one is data privacy, and this is the most important to me because I do a lot of penetration testing. So if you look at the documentation, it will say stuff like full user control. You can turn this on and off when you want. I showed you how to do that, so you may want it off depending what you're doing. Data privacy, all AI request data is processed securely through our trusted AI infrastructure. Well, I do not believe in trust. I believe in verify and not trust. And since I can't verify, it is not a trusted infrastructure. And then it is never stored by our AI providers. I'll believe that when I see it, but you're not going to let me audit your stuff, so I do not trust that. And then industry standard security. So Burp AI complies with ISO 27001 standards and implements robust encryption, ensuring data is protected in transit and at rest, which means that they can see your data at transit and they can see your data at rest because they hold the keys to this encryption. So therefore, your stuff is not necessarily protected, as I have had plenty of places that said everything is encrypted. And when I get there, I find the keys and I decrypt it regardless of where they're storing it and how it is utilized. So with that said, what is this appropriate for? Penetration testing? Well, I would say absolutely not, because you have clients or you have customers or you have your corporation you work for. And depending what that is, whether it's PCI or HIPAA or something else over in the EU, that data should not be stored anywhere else, even if it is ISO compliant, because you don't have control over it. And if you are doing your job and your due diligence to whoever it is you're doing a penetration testing for, you will not use these features on that test. However, that is up to you, but that is my stance on it and what I would do as far as this stuff goes. Next up would be bug bounty, CTF exams, and learning. I would say it's appropriate for all of those, as you don't have a contract or an agreement with anybody else to protect their data. You are just performing stuff in your spare time and having fun or using it to learn. So absolutely use it for all of those use cases, and that is my stance on that. So moving forward, let's run through all the features listed in the Burp AI docs. So the first one is the AI-powered login. So what this is, if we are going to a website and we are going to scan it, we want to be able to auto log into that website every time it kicks us out. And as you know, some websites will kick you out for pretty much everything you do. So you want to be able to log back in so you can scan things, authenticate it, and you don't miss a bunch of findings. So we can do that. Let's hop into we're going to go to Gin and Juice Shop. And also with that, I set up in my scope here. So I went to my scope, and I just added gin and juice shop into my scope. And you also see that Bug Bounty Prompt also added their thing for their extension here as well by default. We'll get into that in a little while. So with that in there, we are at the gin and juice shop, but what we really want to do is we want to go and we want to do a scan. So we're going to open up, let's see, we could probably right click this and hit scan. And we're going to go to the crawl and audit up here. And then we're going to go to scan configuration, and we'll just do a balance scan, and we'll go to the application login. So from here, we can go to use recorded login sequences, record your login sequence using AI or Burp Chrome extension. So we're going to hit this, and we're going to say new, and we're going to go AI recorded login. And in here, we're going to put the URL. So let me grab that right out of here. And let's see. And I believe it will also tell us the login if we go there. So let's log in. Yeah, so username is Carlos. So let me do URL. And we'll go Carlos. And I believe the login is Hunter2, but I'm going to double check that 1 second here. And yes, it is. So that should be good. Hunter2. I'm going to say create recorded login. So we'll hit that. And what it's going to do, it's going to open up the web page. It's going to go to the login, figure what that is, and then it's going to log in and create a session. And then it's going to know how to utilize that. So we'll let it do that. You see it grabbing the login there. It figured out where it was. Likely it's just scanning through the HTML or something of that nature to do that. And it just drops in Carlos. And then it'll drop in Hunter2 there for the password. All right, perfect. We are now logged in, so we should be good to go. I think it gives us a confirmation prompt popping up here in a second. Here we go. Yep. So we'll hit OK. And now we have a login that we can use there. So that's perfect. So let's go. I think we should be good to start now. We have crawl and audit. Yep. Scan configuration. We'll just do a balance scan and we'll hit scan here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this run here in my dashboard and hit pause, and then we'll get back to it once that finishes. So I ran this for about 20 or 30 minutes, and now we have plenty of findings to play around with and different things to take a look at. A couple things I thought about while we were on break. One, as far as the credit systems go, we can see here I have 6,022 credits left. I started with 10,000. I've been playing around with a little bit. It probably used about 100 on this scan while it was going through and doing the logins for me, just so you get an idea of how many you're using. We'll take a look at the differences here as well as we go through. And the other thing I thought about was, so within the help, it talked about access control stuff. So if we go to scan again, you'll see within the scan type, you can select this reduce false positives in broken access control scan checks. So that will add some extra checks to get rid of some false positives and help augment the broken access control so you get better results there. So you can add that to your scan. I believe you need an authenticated and unauthenticated scan in order to do that, because it's going to run checks on both and check, whether the cookie works, whether it didn't, whether you can call it without it, and check the access control stuff. So let me cancel out of that, and let's take a look at our issues. So here we have all of our issues that came back on the scan. Now we can do stuff like right click it and hit explore this issue, but let's first take a look here. So this was a SQL injection. We put a quote in here and it came back with a 500 server error. Then we did 2 quotes, which should close it out, and we got a 200 OK. So that's why it thinks it's SQL injection. But if we take a look at that, it actually has a question mark on here. So is it vulnerable? Is it not? We could say, well, we don't feel like looking at it ourselves. We're going to do other things in our penetration test. But while it's doing that, hey, AI, can you explore this for me? So let's see how many this wastes. So we have 6022, and then we're going to do explore this issue, and we're going to let it run through. And what this is going to do is it's going to do what we would do while we were testing it for a SQL injection finding, but we can go off and do other things, come back here, look at all the things that it tried and give us a better idea of whether this really was vulnerable or whether it wasn't vulnerable. So it looks like it's going to test some Boolean logic first, and it's testing, and 1 equals 1, and it's going to give you some information on that. And it also tells you some other stuff too, like Boolean based, scroll back up here. So Boolean based tests are less likely to break the application, so that's probably why it's starting with that. And then it's testing some union stuff. It's going to determine number of columns with order by. And then it says, from the previous step, we learned the original query returns 3 columns with order by 3 worked. So now it's going to probably run a union select null, 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 or I guess in this case it said union select test, 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 because it's going to keep going through that SQL injection pattern and figure out what it can do with it. I don't know if it's going to enumerate data, etc. We're going to hit pause, and based on running all of this stuff here for us in the background while we were testing other stuff on our own, we went from 6022 to 4834. So we actually used quite a bit of credits just doing that. So that's something to think about when you're buying credits. We just use, 12 or 1400 credits just running a few of these payloads here. So just to think about that. Now the next thing that we can do is we could go back to our dashboard under crawl and audit. We could take a look at this and we say, okay, let's send this over to repeater because we want to play around on our own because we found out, hey, it's vulnerable. And then we look and we go, okay, here is our response. And we go, what is this like CHUA mobile 70 or 0 question mark? I don't know what that is. I actually don't know what that is. So I'll just hit explain this. And then we'll see what it says. It says, header indicates whether the user agent claims to be on a mobile device. In this case, question 0 suggests that the client is not a mobile device. Okay, perfect. So now we learned a little something, and that was also using the AI. And I'm not sure how much that just used there. We'll double check. So 4830, and let's just run it again on this guy. So 4830, and we'll say explain this. And then take a look. So we have 4826. So we actually use 4 credits when we are getting information on a header. So that just gives you an idea, again, how many credits are we using, so we can figure out how many we have for whatever it is that we're doing and make sure that we have enough for whatever activities we plan on doing when we're purchasing those. Because remember, this is kind of a pay-for-play thing. Once you run out of credits, you are done. So the next thing that we can do is we can say, okay, well, is there vulnerabilities in here? Let me bring this back to getting rid of the quote, and I'm going to say, I'm going to right-click, and if it wants to behave, I'm going to right-click, but okay, here we go. And I'm going to say extensions, and I have something called AI HTTP Analyzer installed, which I believe is made by Portswigger. I'm going to say send over to there. Now that is just an extension that I installed right here. You can grab that off of the BAP store, no problem. And we go over to the tab that it gives us, and we have our request right here. We say, hey, let's analyze this. And it's going to go through, take a look, and unlike the Explorer that is, running a bunch of attacks, it's really just going to take a look at it and give you potential things that you can try, which I actually probably prefer because it's probably going to use less credits. Let's take a look here. 4814. I'm not sure how much we had before, but that used much less than the Explorer did, for sure. And it's going to give us some recommendations on what it found. So it's going to say, okay, parameter tamping, SQL injection, and cross-site scripting. So the category parameter in the query string is potentially a target for SQL injection or cross-site scripting. Perfect. And then it says test with these payloads or 1 equals 1 and see if it's vulnerable. Example payload get, and it gives you an example payload. Perfect. And then it says for XSS, use this example payload. And then talks about the cookie manipulation. So tracking cookie appears to be base 64 encoded. Decoding reveals this. So it goes through and it analyzes this request response, and it kind of figures out what are possible attack points for you. So that might be really good if you were maybe assessing some kind of API and you're like, okay, I'm not really getting anywhere. I wonder if AI sees something for me to try. So you just roll it through there and be, okay, perfect. Now it gives me a starting point and I can start playing with this, which might lead to something else. So I actually do find that kind of useful. That's a nice feature. And maybe you had a huge request response pair and you just wanted to analyze it for you because you didn't want to go through all of it initially. You want to see where to target things first. That could be useful. Now, the next thing that we can do is there's another thing called bounty prompt. And what that has, it has specific issues such as looking for API keys. So I was talking a minute ago about like maybe you have a big long response, there's like 10,000 lines, and you're like, hey, is there any API keys in here? You could run that on there and look for those specific things. So we could go back to our repeater, run that guy, select our response here and say, okay, extensions, bounty prompt, and you can use Grok or you can use Burp API. So if you have a Grok API key, you can use that. And we go, okay, let's look for some API keys exposure detection, and we'll hit OK. And then we'll go back to bounty prompt, and we can say prompt output, and it says, okay, sending prompt, executing system and user messages. And it says, analyze the following HTTP responses for any exposed API keys or tokens. And then it says AI response is empty or none, no issue created. So it doesn't look like it found any API keys, but I wasn't trying to necessarily because I knew that there probably wasn't any in there. But that's just something that you could use on a large output, allow API to look for it for you so you don't have to resort to just grepping and running through lists of stuff like that. So there are a bunch of stuff in here for that. We can go to the prompts and you can see there's some CSRF stuff. Vulnerable file uploads. And if we take a look at one of these, so let's say our API keys, we'll say you are an expert web security sensitive data exposure. Your task is to analyze the provided HTTP responses for any potential exposure of API keys or other sensitive tokens. For every potential key found, output the URL and exact line it appears. If none are found, simply respond with none, which is what we got back. So that's perfect. And it says user prompt, analyze the following HTTP responses for any exposed API keys, list each occurrence, and then it just pastes your HTTP response there. So that's how that works. And it's good to look at this because you could modify this if you wanted, and you can also add in your own. So if there's a lot of custom checks that you do on all of these, and you're looking for specific things or certain vulnerability classes, or maybe you're doing some research and development and you have a custom project and you're trying to analyze specific things, you just want to run it over and over again with a prompt and using AI, you can just create your own thing and do that. So that might be quite useful depending what you're doing with that. But again, what is that waste? So we have 4801. Let's run that again just on a simple API check. So we'll say repeater. So we had 4801. We're going to send this to the extension and we're going to say API keys. And I don't know if this is based on, how big it is or whatnot, but we had 4801. We ran that. We now have 4794. So it looks like we wasted like 7 or so credits looking through that. And it may increase or decrease based on the size of the response, I'm assuming, because based on the processing that it does, I'm assuming that's how it works. Because I have seen variances in specific things I did, like if I'm right-clicking, I'm hitting explain. Certain ones wasted 5, some wasted 4. So it's going to vary a little, but that just gives you a baseline on how much it's actually going to use. Okay, perfect. So we went through that. You can use some prompts within some stuff. You can automatically analyze. You can automatically explore things. So that's awesome. Let's take a look at some other stuff here. So we're talking about the repeater stuff, like automated repeater stuff. We can do that with extensions. And so if I go back into to installed, I'm going to get rid of bounty prompt because we don't need it. I'm going to get rid of HTTP analyzer because we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to say, okay, let's use logger++, and let's use shadow repeater. And my logger++ is empty. And shadow repeater, what it will do is every, I think, 5 requests you make, it will look at what you're doing and then continue its own testing based on what it's seeing. It may or may not be useful, and I'm seeing some dangerous stuff come out of here. So I would be very careful with this on my penetration test, but let's see what happens. So we have our initial request, okay, and if we look at logger++, we'll see tool repeater, and here's our request. Let's go back and we're going to run through like 5 of these and then check it out. So we're going to say, okay, we're looking for SQL injection. So I'm going to put a quote in. It says, oh, we have a 500 internal server error. Okay, cool. Does that go away if I put a second one? Yes, it does. So we probably have something there. Do we have a union issue? So we'll go, okay. We'll say union select. And we'll say no. Actually, I'm going to check for double quotes first. So let's do that first. So that just comes back 200 okay, so it might not be an issue. So now we'll check the union select. Union select. And we'll say no. And we'll go dash dash space and we'll hit send. And then we got an internal server. We'll say no again. We're trying 2 of them. Server error. Let's see if we got anything activity yet. We do. So we have my stuff in here. So we have accessories. We put in a quote, put in a double quote, put in or 2 quotes, a double quote. We put in union select null. And then the extension started going. So it saw my thing, it repeated it, and then it put in some random stuff. Looks like it's trying in union select null there, but it's not using the plus, it's just a URL encoding it. It's going through, trying some various things. I see some more union selects. I see an order by 1. I see a sleep, so it's trying some blind SQL injection with some timing. Something else here. Select, union. So it's just going through and it's trying a lot of things and probably basing what it does next based on what it's seeing. Now, note on this though, I used this earlier today and it did run a drop tables. So this is one of the reasons why I'm saying don't use it for a real penetration testing or real data. It's great for CTFs. Honestly, this particular plugin, you might not want to use it on your bug bounty as well unless they're using some kind of QA environment, because although the drop tables will probably be stopped because you don't have rights to do so, plenty of people, especially in QA environments and also in production, will run as an administrator in back end and it may execute and then somebody's going to be very, very mad at you. So when you have something that's automatically doing things and it has no rails on it to stop it from going off the rails, then be very, very careful with it. So again, I definitely wouldn't use this extension on anything but a CTF. But it's kind of cool the way it works and seeing what it's doing. It's kind of taking what you're doing and going further with it. It's kind of neat, but I would want to go in and see, okay, what's this code doing? Can I modify this code to not use certain SQL commands? Can I put it within some kind of guardrails or some way to stop this from doing very, very bad things? And that's kind of the way I look at it. So I think that's most of what I really wanted to look at here today. I really just wanted to give an overview of all of the features that are in the help documentation and run through just some various useful things that you can do. And now you can make up your mind whether you want to use this tool or whether you don't, or what you want to use it on. But again, remember, it stores data such as HIPAA and PCI data encrypted somewhere that is out of your control, and it's sending data through third parties that have agreements. And right now I'm putting my hands up in quotes because agreements don't mean anything. You can do whatever you want, and agreements change on the drop of a hat. And since you are not part of the process of writing up those agreements and your data is already in their little thing, encrypted up, it might change and then they have access to it on the third party side. So that is my warning on that, and that is my rundown on Burp API. Hopefully you learned something today. If you did, like, subscribe, and definitely throw me a comment below, maybe on what you ate for breakfast, and I will catch you later in the next video. Peace.